Well, when you're studying Trinitarian theology, when you're studying the Trinity, you can't help but notice this huge blip in church history. It happened in the year AD 325, the Council of Nicea, the first ecumenical council that the church ever experienced. And we're going to go through 6 things you need to know because it's such an important event in Catholic church history as it relates to how we understand the doctrine of the Holy Trinity. So, first of all, it was convened by the Emperor Constantine. Constantine is the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity. His conversion is debated. He was not baptized until just shortly before he died, and it seemed that his conversion, some question whether it was genuine, but I think it was genuine, and it's transitional. Over time, you see him moving more and more towards the church, and when he was looking over the Roman Empire and he was surveying this massive movement that was happening at that time. We're talking about Christianity, conversions to the church throughout the entire empire. He realized that there was a major debate amongst Christians at that time. And the debate was one at the very core of Christian belief, and that is, who is Jesus Christ? He's obviously a man. He was a carpenter. He was a rabbi. He taught and preached in the Holy Land. He was crucified under Pontius Pilate. He rose again on the 3rd day. But what is his relationship to God? Is he God? And what does the word Son of God mean? Well, there were different ideas, different opinions about what the status of Christ was in relationship to God the Father. And there were debates breaking out all over, especially in Egypt, down in Alexandria. And so he convened all the world's bishops. He invited them to come to discuss this important issue. And it happened in the year 325, and he called them to the city of Nicea, which is in Bithynia. Now, he invited about, scholars estimate, 1,800 bishops, 1,800 bishops. And although historians fudge a little bit on the numbers, the traditional number of bishops who actually showed up was 318. Only 318. You have to remember, there are no planes, travel is very costly, very dangerous, but nonetheless, there were bishops from all over the Roman Empire, almost every province except for, I believe, Britain. So you have bishops coming in from as far as Egypt, North Africa, the Middle East, Italy, France, all over. They're coming together to debate this important issue. Who is Jesus Christ? And is he, as we shall see, is he of the same substance as God the Father? So all this happened in the year 325. Now, secondly, this, as we said before, is the first ecumenical council. There was a council in the book of Acts with the apostles. They came together to decide whether circumcision was required for Christians. They ruled that it was not. It was for all the Gentiles, the Jew and the Gentile. But this is the first worldwide council, and it's the first of many. The Eastern Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, only reckons the first 7. The Western Church, the Roman Catholic Church, reckons all the way to the Second Vatican Council, right? So this was the first ecumenical council, the first in a series of many. Third, it established that Christ was of the same substance of the Father, that Jesus Christ was fully God, fully eternal, that he existed into eternity past, back. There was no beginning to his existence, and of course he will exist forever. He is co-equal to the Father. Now, the council did not determine the status of the Holy Spirit. That happened in the same century, but several decades later in the year 381, and we'll see that in the next video class. But right now we're just going to focus on the Council of Nicea. And fourthly, this council ratified a creed, the first ecumenical creed called the Nicene Creed. This is the basis of the creed that we recite every single Sunday to this day, the Nicene Creed. Now, The creed that was established in 325 is a bit different than the one we recite today because it was revised at the Council of Constantinople in 381, which will be our next video lesson. So we'll compare and contrast and see what the bishops added in 381 in the next video lesson. But it's important to know that the original creed, kind of the primal version of it, happened here in 325. Also, the fifth thing that happened at the Council of Nicea is the church established a universal way of dating the feast of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, Easter. There were various ways of reckoning the date of Easter Sunday, and at AD 325, at this council, the entire church got on the same schedule, which was very important because it symbolizes the unity of the entire church. Notably, since then, because the original Julian calendar does not adequately correspond to the rotation with regard to us and the sun, it began to be off by several days. And so the Gregorian calendar was established, which corrected that. And in the Eastern Church to this day, some of those jurisdictions still follow the Julian. And so you may have noticed, if you have Eastern Orthodox friends, that the calendars sometimes slip and slide and aren't always the same. That's because of those calculations. Hopefully that will get cleared up in the years to come with the Eastern churches. And the sixth thing is that the Council of Nicea established canon law. Canon law is the policies, the procedures, the rules that the church abides by. This applies to clergy and laity. So we have our first here example of a universal rules and procedures, universal canon law applied to the entire Catholic Church. Now, the real reason that we're studying the Council of Nicea relates to the Arian controversy. This is a controversy that began in the early 300s. There was a priest named Arius. He was in Alexandria, Egypt, and he was preaching these stirring sermons in which he stated that there was a time when Jesus Christ did not exist. In other words, Jesus Christ, the second person of the Trinity, the eternal Logos, the eternal Word, came into existence. This was scandalizing the faithful, and as people found out about it throughout the empire, people continued to be scandalized. And Constantine, he is sympathetic to the Christians, but he realizes, how is it that all these Christians, they're converting from all over the empire, they're coming together into this church, but they have disagreements over who their founder is. Of course, he was a man, but what is his status as God? Is he fully God? Is he kind of like God? Is he not God at all? Is he like a super angel? Who is Jesus Christ? And we know what he did here on earth, but who was he before he became incarnate of the Virgin Mary? So he calls everyone together. And there are four parties, four disagreeing groups, four sects that have a different answer as to who is Jesus Christ. Now, there's the Orthodox party. This is the first group, the Homoousians. The Homoousians. These men, these bishops, believe that Jesus Christ is homo, same ousia, substance, with God the Father. He is fully God, fully man, just as we recite in the Creed. This is the Catholic teaching. This is the biblical teaching. Then you have a second group. These are the Heteroousians. Hetero means opposite or different. And these are led by Arius, this heretic. And they teach that Jesus Christ is of a different substance than the Father. He's not fully God. He's created by God the Father. So he's below God. He is of a different substance. Heteroousian. Okay, those are the two polars, the Homoousian and the Heteroousian. Then there's a group that comes along who tries to moderate things, and they're called the Homoiousian. The difference there is they inserted an I, a iota, because homo in Greek means same. Homoi, you add the I on the end, means like, kind of like. So homoiousian, they said, well, Jesus is kind of like the Father. He's not, of the same substance as God the Father, but he's kind of like the Father, right? So it's kind of, let's all get along here. By adding that I in there, we can sort of maybe bridge the gap. Well, that position was also rejected. And then there was a fourth party, and they are called the Homoians. And they said, let's just say that the Father and the Son are kind of like each other. And let's not even use this word ousia because it's way too controversial. You already have three parties, three different groups using that term, and everybody's in disagreement. So let's just get rid of that word. Let's not talk about ousia anymore. And of course, they're rejected as well. And at that council was a young deacon named Athanasius. And he really inspired people to rally to the homoousion party. The Pope in Rome was in favor, of course, of the Orthodox position, homoousion, and it won the day. And of course, there's the famous story, I have to share it here, of St. Nicholas. Remember Santa Claus from Christmas? There's the story in which Arius was on the floor of the council, and Arius was presenting his position that Jesus Christ is not fully God. And St. Nicholas, jolly old St. Nick, couldn't take it anymore. So he stood up from his seat and he walked over to Arius and he punched him in the face and cold-cocked Arius. Well, the bishops were alarmed that a bishop would just stand up and cold-cock Arius, who was presumed to be a heretic. So they deposed him. This is all in the legend. And while St. Nicholas was out of the meeting, he was deposed, the Blessed Virgin Mary and Jesus Christ appeared to him and said, "Thank you for defending my honor and dignity as fully God." And they reinstated him personally, and they gave him his book of the Gospels and his staff and his mitre and reinstated him. And he appeared back at the council, and they realized that although it may not have been appropriate to punch someone in the face, Nicholas was standing for the proper position, the homoousion position. And so the council decreed that the church would continue to use this term, homoousion, same substance. In Latin, it becomes consubstantial, as we say in the Creed. Jesus Christ is consubstantial with the Father. That was decreed in the Nicene Creed, the original one, not the one that we say today, which has been modified, as we mentioned before. And the story does not end here, because although this council decreed this, although it was ratified by the Pope, the debate raged on for decades. And you had bishops all over the empire who were moving in and out of these camps. Well, maybe Jesus is kind of like the Father. And even though it had been ratified, there was still a lot of debate, and Arius was still around teaching what he had always taught, right? Now, I want to share the story of the end of Arius's life. And it happened like this. It's a little bit graphic, so hold on to your seats. So Arius was eventually, by a local council, which was a false council, it was in Jerusalem, I believe, was decreed to be Orthodox. And it was decreed that he should be let back into the church, that he was no longer a heretic, and that his teaching should stand. So Arius was coming into the imperial city of Constantinople, and the archbishop, the patriarch of Constantinople, was grieved at heart. And he prayed, "God, please either let Arius die or me die. I cannot stomach the thought of Arius being in my church, in my cathedral, receiving communion, being recognized as a true priest in good standing." So Arius was coming into the city, and he was being greeted by those who agreed with him, and I'm sure he was feeling very confident about his status, his new elevation as being Orthodox, even though he wasn't. He denied the Creed of Nicea. So he comes in, and as he's coming to the cathedral, he suddenly feels some pains in his bowels, and he asks for a public restroom. So his followers take him to this public restroom, and there in the public restroom, historians say, he had a major problem with his bowel movement, where his intestines came out. He bled to death in the public restroom. He died right there. And for many years, that public restroom was denoted, hey, that's where Arius died, that heretic who tried to come back in the church. That is where he was smitten down, until finally some sympathizers of Arius purchased the public restroom and had it destroyed. And we'll put a graphic up of Arius in that uncomfortable situation. It's in some icons, it's even in some churches, the demise of Arius. And historians have said that he probably suffered from what's called a rectal prolapse. So this has been a very colorful lesson. We had St. Nicholas getting in a fist fight. We had the terrible demise of Arius, but also this important teaching that Jesus Christ is homoousion with God the Father. That is the lesson of the Council of Nicea. And in the next video lesson, we'll look at the next council, Council of Constantinople, where the creed is really completed and where they uphold that the Holy Spirit is also fully God. So we'll see you in that next lesson. God bless.